Namaste. Greetings from Mumbai, India. The story that I'm about to share with you today evening is timeless as timely, and it has influenced people across cultures. This is the story of a bard who wanted to become famous. The story of what happens when you confront compassion. Legend has it that the story of Ram, the epic Ramayan, the great Hindu Indian epic Ramayan, was written not only by the erstwhile bard Valmiki, but also by the legendary son of the wind god Vayu, Hanuman. Hanuman was the son of the wind god Vayu. Well, like all stories begin, this story too begins in the same way. And here it goes. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in the higher ages, righteousness or dharma stood upright on all three legs. Well, in those times, in a forest hamlet deep within the dense jungles of somewhere in central India, there lived a forest monk with his acolytes and disciples in a hermitage. And his name was Valmiki. Valmiki was a bard and he was writing his story. One day, Valmiki put down his stylus and smiled, heaved a sigh of relief. For you see, he had just finished writing his story about the young prince of Ayodhya, Ram. Valmiki called his story Valmiki's Ramayan, meaning Valmiki's story of Ram. He had written it in the verse form. And mighty pleased with his handiwork, his creation, Valmiki was impatient. He wanted to take it round the world to show it to all the gods and the goddesses and the ultimate critic, Narad. You see, he needed validation, just like we all do. He might be showing off a little bit, but why not? After all, he had worked hard, long, on his epic poem. Valmiki decided to visit the kingdom of the gods, Indra, the rain god. The rain god took one look at Valmiki's epic poem and exclaimed, "Brilliant!" Valmiki then took it to the wind god, Vayu. Vayu too looked at it and said, "Marvelous, marvelous." Then Valmiki visited Agni, the fire god. And Agni too exclaimed, "I like it, I like it." And then Valmiki visited the sea god Varun. Varun also took a look at it and he said, "Simply superb, brilliant, marvelous, I like it." Valmiki was so happy with all the accolades and the praises that he had received. He decided to march towards the river goddess Ganga, Ganges, as you know her, and her tributaries. The river goddesses, when they saw Valmiki's epic poem, they gasped in delight. They admired the meter, the melody, the grammar, the punctuation of the epic poem. Valmiki was indeed very happy. With all the praises ringing in his ears, he walked happily towards Kailas, to the abode of Vishnu, where Narad lived. As he reached Narad's house, Narad was in deep meditation in his chin mudra, chanting the Lord's name. Om Namo Narayanaaya, Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Narad finished his prayers, looked up and saw Valmiki and greeted him. Welcome, Valmiki. Welcome to my humble abode. What brings you here, my friend? Valmiki too greeted Narad and said, You see, Narad, I have written the story of the young prince of Ayodhya. I would like you to take a look at my epic poem and give your words, your comments on the same. Narad took Valmiki's poem, went through the entire script, and when he came to the end of it, he said, nice, but what? You see, said Narad, I have read another Ramayan, which is a bit better. Better Ramayan? Another Ramayan? Asked Valmiki, confused and shocked. Another story? Valmiki thought he had written a unique story, one of its kind, about the people, the rulers, the ruled, the land, the demons and the gods. Another Ramayan? Competition? Better Ramayan? Who indeed could it be? The confused, shocked Valmiki turned to Narad and said, Narad, tell me, who's written this better Ramayan indeed? Narad smiled at Valmiki's confusion and said, My friend, it is Hanuman, if you must know. Hanuman? Did I hear you say Hanuman? Can't be. No. Hanuman is a character in my story. Hanuman is the monkey who builds bridges, who can leap through the sky, across the seas, fight wars. He freed Sita from captivity from the 10-headed demon Ravan. You mean that Hanuman? Hanuman, an author? Valmiki was incredulous, couldn't believe his eyes. Narad smiled. He loved what he had created and said, Of course, it is Hanuman indeed. In fact, I have a suggestion for you, said Narad. Why don't you take your story to Hanuman? Show it to him, and I'm sure Hanuman will let you read his story. Where will I find Hanuman? Asked Valmiki. You see, his face had fallen, became small, woebegone. Taking pity on him, Narad smiled and said, Go northwards, towards the mighty Himalayan ranges. There, between two great mountains, is a warm valley, and in that valley you will find Hanuman in a banana grove, said Narad. Valmiki thanked Narad, took his leave, and set out in this quest to find Hanuman. Such was the nature of Valmiki's will and determination that he took this arduous journey that took him many nights, days, weeks turned to months, months turned to years, and finally, after crossing ridges and canyons, meadows and forests, hills, rivers, lakes, Valmiki finally reached the foothills of the mighty Himalayas. There, Valmiki had to face the icy winds blowing from the snow-capped mountains. Ridges, rough path strewn with stones and boulders, rocky ledges, and the icy deep rivers. He crossed all this, the mighty spine of the Himalayas, and reached beyond it to a place hauntingly beautiful, foreboding, where no man had been before, only a few. This was the land of the gods, Devabhumi, as we call it. And there, just like Narad said, between two great lofty mountains, there was a warm valley. As Valmiki entered the valley, he came to the banana grove. He was so tired, exhausted after this long journey. But Valmiki looked around with wonder and saw this paradise. Everywhere he looked, he saw green leaves, purple flowers, yellow fruits, birds singing, deers flitting. Oh, it was indeed paradise. Never had he seen such an enchanting place. Valmiki was tired and a bit hungry. He took a few bananas, was about to peel them and eat them, when his glance fell upon a few broad banana leaves fluttering in the wind. There appeared to be something different on the smooth green surface. There appeared to be scratch marks. Intrigued, Valmiki went closer, drew the 7 broad leaves, banana leaves, brought them closer, and as he looked at it with close intent, he saw they were not scratch marks, they were nail marks. They were letters, words, sentences, a story, the story of Ram, Hanuman's Ramayan. Valmiki began to read through the lines, every turn of phrase, punctuation, full stop. He didn't want to miss a single word, a single phrase. He had never read a story so beautifully written, way better than his own story. Tears were coursing down his cheeks. He was weeping as he was reading the great epic story. The birds in the forest, the bees, and the deer, they all came to him and chorused, "Sir, why do you cry? Are you in pain? Perhaps we can be of help." Valmiki wiped his tears, paused a bit, thanked them, continued weeping as he continued to read the story. The long afternoon turned to evening, and as the evening light faded, and as the sun set in the twilight, in the dusky evening, Valmiki continued to weep. He felt a physical presence behind his shoulders. Valmiki turned around and looked behind, and he saw an old monkey with a white flowing beard, a wrinkled lined face, weather beaten, eyes filled with God's peace, kindness. And the monkey spoke, "I am Hanuman, the servant of God. Sir, why are you crying? Are you in pain? May I help you?" Valmiki turned to Hanuman with wonder. Hands folded, greeted Hanuman and said, "Hanuman, thank you. Thank you. I'm Valmiki. You see, I've been reading your story. Your story has moved me to tears." "Is my story so bad, sir?" asked Hanuman. No. On the contrary, these are tears of joy. Never have I read a story so well written." "Thank you, sir. Thank you," said Hanuman. "But you see, Hanuman," Valmiki was a bit embarrassed, but he continued because the words had to be said. "I too have written the story of the young prince of Ayodhya, Ram. But having read your story now, I know your story is far superior, way better than mine. Now no one will read my story. I wanted to take my story around the world to show it to all the people, said Valmiki. When Hanuman heard this, he smiled gently, eyes filled with God's peace, kindness, gentleness emanating from him. He stretched his arms, stroked Valmiki's cheeks just like a mother would comfort a child, and gently placed his hand on the shoulders as if comforting Valmiki. And then, quietly, in the stillness of the evening, Hanuman gathered the 7 banana leaves on which his story was etched, bundled them, bunched them, crumpled them into a ball, and swallowed it whole. "What have you done? Oh, Hanuman!" cried Valmiki. "What have you done? Why? Why? You've destroyed your story. Why?" Hanuman was quiet. Silence reigned in the grove. And after some time, Hanuman gently smiled and then replied to Valmiki, "You see, Valmiki, you wrote the Ramayan because the world would know about you. I wrote Ramayan because I wanted to think of Ram. You needed your story more than I need mine. You see, Ram lives within me." So saying, the great compassionate Hanuman, who embodied compassion, turned to Valmiki and began to sing the praise of Ram. "Andar Ram, bahar Ram, andar Ram, bahar Ram, jahan dekhe wahan राजा ही राम, गुरु कृपांजन पायो मेरे भाई, राम बिना कछु देखत नाही, गुरु कृपांजन पायो मेरे भाई, पायो रे मेरे भाई." So singing, the compassionate Hanuman disappeared in the evening twilight, leaving Valmiki with his story, with his great epic Ramayan. Perhaps the bard tweaked his story, who knows? Today, Valmiki remains the erstwhile poet, the bard who wrote the great Indian epic Ramayan. Thank you. Namaste.